Hey everyone, welcome to a new return of the Living Geeks. And I, as always, am your fairly functional mm, I'm your
Person.
very
It's this
functional
person now.
host. Um, and listen, it is not St. Patrick's Day, but it's still March, and we're going to be talking about some kind of lesser known Irish horror films. But joining me is, as always, our illustrious co-host, Andre Couture.
Hello.
Um, yeah, I'm excited. So we each picked our own film. You know, everybody's kind of doing like Leprechaun films in that horror series. But I kind of wanted to mix it up a little bit, do something different. So I thought we could like maybe talk about some stuff that maybe doesn't really get a lot of love. Um,
Yeah. So what I've chosen is something that I discovered not too long ago, but I kind of just like fell in love with it while I was watching it for the first time. And that would be Liam Gavin's A Dark Song, just behind me there. It's the key art. Um, so without getting too detailed right away, A Dark Song is about a young woman who buys a house, like a big old house that hasn't been like occupied for years at least. Um, she apparently knows that the house is like haunted or like possessed by spirits, and she reaches out to an occultist to cleanse the house and apparently knows everything that she needs to like prepare for. They lay out a plan to cleanse this house, and it's going to take a very long time. So um, that's largely the plot of the film, is just them talking about it, planning it, and then going through with the process, which takes quite a toll on both of them. Because once it starts, they can't leave the house. There's some points where they both can't eat for like 3 days. Um, and there's like rituals that have to happen at certain times a day. And from there, it's like they're hungry, they're sleep deprived, and they can't like reach out or talk to anyone else. It's really just like a very small ensemble piece of pretty much just two people in this house, and it's a really fascinating, like gripping, like dreadful um, journey, pretty much. It's a little bit about grief, but not in the way that a lot of other modern horror would focus on it, where um, the grief of like losing someone or more than one person kind of takes the forefront as the catalyst for horror. But this is more of like having largely moved on, but still like there's that hole in yourself where you still very clearly miss and love that person, but um, it's something a little bit more meditative that I think that's what stuck with me. And I think anyone who um, can identify with that or at least sympathize with, and horror fans are nothing if not like sympathetic, you know? So I think this will land for a lot of people. It's a very slow moving movie. It's not very long. It's just the pacing and the fact that you're only really following like two people for most of the movie. Um, but yeah, it's without getting a little bit too much more detailed and into it. It's a really like beautifully woven story that goes into some really surprising places, especially near the end. So it's comes highly recommended for me. Um, it may not be your thing, but it's also all about just checking out new stuff and seeing what works for you, what doesn't. Yeah, it's a dark song. Should be on Shudder right now.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. I really like horror that is very relatable. Like I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the fantastical. Obviously, what I'm going to be talking about is squarely in that sort of fantasy horror realm. But
Mhm.
yeah, I do love when it's like a journey that's very personable and relatable, which this sounds like it is. So yeah, I know I've heard really good things also. Like um, I was trying to find some time to sort of cram it into my watching before this episode. But this whole week/weekend now has been kind of crazy, but I definitely want to check that out.
Mhm.
So
It's really nice to watch like late at night, like right before you go to sleep.
hmm,
Um, that may be good advice for some and terrible advice for others, but for you, Mike, I think that this is one of those like nightcap movies
hmm,
where like
okay.
you go to sleep with the memories of like the finale to the film and everything that leads up to that.
How bleak is it? Like I'm just trying to like sometimes I have to be in the right mindset for a movie.
It's not very bleak at all.
Hmm.
If anything, like there's some like hopeless moments, but they're pretty fleeting. Like not fleeting really, but they they come and go. It's like just as if you would see like a spirit passing down a hallway and like you don't really know anything about it, but their visage is just completely hopeless and like you
Hmm.
can tell that there's this palpable dread about it, but then it's gone. It's
Okay.
like it
Um,
doesn't like try to hammer you into like um this hopeless feeling. It's just like it's giving you a tapestry of like everything um good and bad that can happen in like this occult world.
hmm.
So it's really just like more interesting to ruminate on afterwards.
Oh yeah. So I love stuff like that too, where it's really I mean, I love like mindless garbage films, which is the one I'm going to talk about, but I also love movies that like I think about like days and days afterwards.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
say that this is going to be one of those movies for
nice.
sure.
That's awesome. Like so is it like what's it sort of is it similar to anything that like I might have seen or like any of
Mm,
our viewers?
not film wise. Like I
Hmm.
would say like if you're familiar with the works of Shirley Jackson, like
Okay.
Haunting of Hill House, especially, maybe a little bit of We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Um, for anyone who's like read those or at least familiar with them, it kind of builds on that idea of something ineffably wrong or um, off, like about a place.
Hmm.
But these characters are addressing it directly rather than a more of an indirect approach, where Hill House is a little bit more direct than Castle, but um, it gets very specific into like types of occult methods. It names some specific rituals that are happening or about to happen. And as far as that goes, it's actually really accurate. Like they had someone I think, come on to basically be the dramaturge for um, for the occult rituals that were named and depicted on screen. So you actually do get some actual rituals and not just like some made up stuff for movies.
That's pretty interesting. So like I will not be cursed if I watch this movie though, right? Like there's no like
No,
no like dripping long-haired women coming out of my TV.
no, it's pretty. You'll be pretty safe. Like you don't need to wear like an iron blanket or anything.
I mean, I will if I want to though.
I mean, whatever makes you comfortable, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's really sounds really cool. Like I really want to check that out now. So yeah, so we're going from what seems to be really highbrow and classy and introspective, and then I'm going to talk about Rawhead Rex, which I love dearly. And it's so okay. So I'll get in the plot first. The plot basically is there's a photographer named Howard, and he is doing some research, and he brought along his wife Elaine and his two children, and they go to this like little Irish like village, and it just so happens that a giant demigod named Rawhead Rex is resurrected and basically going berserk, slaughtering everybody in town. And yeah, it is just as sort of bananas as it sounds. So
Yeah.
um, it's so funny because like I first saw like this movie on VHS, and I hated it. I thought it was dumb. I don't know. I probably rented it pretty early on, so I didn't really have like my palette wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. I say that with a lot of sarcasm, but yeah, so it's funny because it's a movie that has grown on me, and now I would actually say it's kind of one of my favorites. I'm trying to get away from saying like guilty pleasure in like movie terms, but
Yeah.
one could definitely say that it's a guilty pleasure.
I mean, like if you think that it's something that you shouldn't be taking pleasure in, then yeah, like that that's what that would mean for you. But like I feel like I know you enough to know that like there's nothing guilty about liking this movie.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you don't have any like regrets, or you don't feel any like slimy or gross for
Yeah,
reveling in this guy like just killing people left and right.
it's so funny because like I kind of like would like younger me would find myself apologizing for liking stuff like this, but now I mean like I feel like as you get older I feel like in a lot of respects you just don't give a shit about
Yep.
anything or what anybody thinks. But yeah, it's a really fun movie. So I know you recently watched it. So I know you were kind of like,
I was middle of the road with it, but like I had the same kind of approach to it where I think that I will appreciate it on some repeat viewings. I just need to, for me, I need to give it a little bit of time in between.
yeah,
Um, it is uh, breakneck efficient though. Like the moment that the opening credits is over, it seems like it seems like it wants to make up for the time that it's wasted in showing the opening credits, and it just goes straight into the plot, and then like it never like pauses for a moment to like you know to have a moment. I mean, it has its moments, but it goes through its like plotted beats um, almost as if it was on a really tight schedule, which I think is uh, this may make it sound like it's not a good thing, but it actually is a good thing. Um, there's nothing more interesting to like the horror film viewer than like a creature feature like this that runs at like an efficient short runtime. You know,
Yeah.
it's like almost pretty concentrated. It's a very concentrated film.
Yeah, it's so funny because like when I rewatched it, I realized that like, you get right into the monster in the first like 5 minutes. I don't even think it's actually 5 minutes until they actually resurrect Rawhead. Um, and then it's kind of wild because it turns into like a straight up slasher movie. Um,
Mhm.
like it's so funny. It's almost like quintessential like 80s slasher territory where there's like a young couple and they're in the woods and they're making out and they're like, I hear something. Oh, what is that? What is that? And, of course, Rawhide gets them. But yeah, oh my gosh, I love this movie so much. So yeah.
There you go. This is a good
um,
segue into that. I
yeah.
can't remember if this is the guy who gets killed
Yeah,
from the
that's
couple.
the like boyfriend where he calls his sister's kid like a bloody pig, I think.
Oh yeah, yep.
He's like a bloody pig. And I apologize for that horrible accent. Um, but it's so bad. I don't even think that qualifies as an accent. But um, yeah, it is a Clive Barker. It's an adaptation. Now I am not familiar with the source material. Are you?
I'm not, although I think that Rawhead Rex is part of one of the stories in the Books of Blood,
Hmm.
um, which is a collection of short stories by him. But yeah, I have not read the story that Rawhead Rex is in.
Yeah, I need to get that because that collection also has Candyman, right?
Yeah, it has the Candyman short story. There's so many stories in that Books of Blood collection. Um, I want to say that there's um, the short story that Lord of Illusions is based on,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and that character from Lord of Illusions, Harry, the main character, he does like in fact interact with different monsters and other like antagonists in Clive Barker's world,
Oh,
including
nice.
Rawhead Rex
Nice.
and like some Cenobites.
Oh yeah, you got to have
So
some Cenobite love. Well, what's really interesting, so pretty notoriously, I'm pulling up my notes right now, but Clive Barker was very unhappy with how this adaptation turned out. And actually, there's a rumor that he only directed Hellraiser because he was so unsatisfied with the director and what he did with Rawhead Rex.
yeah,
So in a way, we have Rawhead Rex to thank for one of the most unique 80s horror films I think ever. And
yeah,
yeah, that's a little bit of a backhanded compliment because, he's saying it was so terrible that he's going to do it himself. I don't think it's that bad. I really think that this is a movie that gets kind of a bum rap. Um,
yeah. And so since then, since like the initial release of Rawhead Rex, he's actually come around a little bit more on it, where
hmm.
he said he liked it better, but like still obviously wasn't the way that he would do it as if he were to direct it. Um, but it's funny because I don't feel like it's the first time like a creator or writer has been disillusioned by working with Charles Band, because that's
Yeah.
because I mean he runs his movies like a business.
Yeah.
So he probably didn't want to take the risk of giving the guy who wrote the script the directing helm, which is weird because like he would always like give these people who've never directed before like their first directing gig and promise them like this illustrious opening, opening weekend and like all these theaters and everything. But like this one guy who wrote the movie that they're making, like he just hired some other director who, if I remember correctly, didn't really do much else before this. I could be wrong. It's been a little while.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really interesting to like it definitely makes me want to go back and like read the original source. But I mean, I will say that it's one thing to appreciate this film, and it's another to have this be something you actually created, and um the end result was not something you were happy with. So even to hear that he's sort of at least a little bit come around to it is kind
Mhm.
of cool to hear.
Yeah, I think he was of the mind that this was going to be um, largely like this folk um, icon that he's creating to enact justice, but it kind of turns into that slasher, as you said, and I think for him, like it's definitely cheapened the effect of what Rawhead Rex is here to do in the movie. Um, but uh, as for the director, I just remembered that the last movie he directed was also another Clive Barker story, and this one is actually like just not really that good. It's called Transmutations, aka Underworld, which
Oh,
is
okay.
kind of it's. I think it might. I don't know if it's connected to the Books of Blood, but it's got a very um, proto Nightbreed feeling to it.
Okay.
Um, it's an interesting curio, but like it's a little surprising that like one year he directed this, and then the very next year directed another Clive Barker story. It must have been a contract thing or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's a shame. It would be really interesting. I'm sure he's not directing anymore, Clive Barker, but I mean, it would be really cool to if he was at least creatively involved in a remake. Like, didn't Hulu do like a Books of Blood like anthology?
yeah, it was a series or something.
Yeah,
I haven't dived into that mostly because I feel like I should read them before
yeah.
watching like a series based on it.
I'm kind of curious if it was even any good because I haven't really heard a lot about it. Like, I don't really hear anybody talking about it. I didn't really hear a lot of buzz pretty much when it came out.
Yeah, I've heard some like middle of the road reactions to it, um, but not really that much. Just like it's okay, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Well, and I mean, sometimes okay is a small miracle. Sometimes,
Yeah, because like you don't know like who's saying it's okay and like what is that based on. Um, so it's never really like an accurate picture because like you never really know until you check it out yourself.
yeah.
So it could actually be okay. It could be amazing. It could be like the worst thing ever. You never know.
One of the things I wanted to talk about with this movie that I think is really interesting, which is okay. So from here on out, I'm going to talk about the ending. So it's going to get a little spoilery. Maybe jump ahead 5 minutes if you actually want to check this out, which I highly recommend you do. But we're going to talk about the finale, and if you don't care, keep watching. But this is your spoiler warning. I think what's so interesting about the ending is, and it's kind of set up a little bit, but ultimately it's not, the like quote unquote hero photographer guy that saves the day. It's actually his wife who is kind of sidelined as just another sort of disposable character, but she actually sort of wields the power that ultimately like brings him down. And like it's the statue that is like very how do I want to say this nicely, vagina forward. Um
Yep.
like it's just a beam that comes right out of it and kills him, and I love it. Like I'm here for it. So but I mean, when you think about it though, that's kind of it's pretty bold. Like I think that that's a really interesting aspect that yeah, the movie is cheesy, the monster looks kind of goofy. I mean, you can see from yeah. But it does have some interesting things, and I think that's probably one of the more interesting aspects of the movie. Yes, it could have been sort of built upon more. Like they do sort of like there's a pretty great sequence where Rawhead like breaks into this random like house and kills the husband, but like leaves the wife because she's like very visibly pregnant. Um,
Mhm.
and he like spares her. So again, it kind of sort of ties into this like the theme of like what ultimately brings him down is like womanhood and like a sort of maternal aspect of it. I mean, again, it's maybe not set up in a way that's like really thought provoking or even sort of like on a basic sort of story level. And I'm kind of curious now if it's something that was tackled in the source material, that kind of
Yeah.
connection.
All of like the lore that surrounds Rawhead Rex in the movie, it's like they almost didn't fully mine it for the material that it's worth, but like they give you just enough of it to not really have to seem like they're leaning on it as a crutch of like, this is why it's happening. Like, I'm going to give you this exposition dump, blah, blah, blah. So there's a plot point with like the stained glass windows in the movie where they're not accurately put together, which is what the photographer is working on, like for a good part of the movie, I think. Um, and when he figures it out, that's when we have this moment with his wife, where she is this figure that the stained glass window is supposed to depict, which is basically some kind of pictograph that like tells you how to subdue Rawhead Rex. The visual cues are there. Um, they just don't dig too deep into it
Yeah.
because I think the filmmakers have this attitude that like you didn't really come here for that. Like you came here to see Rawhead Rex bursting
Right.
out of the ground, ripping off people's heads, pissing on a priest, and um, just like fucking shit up. And like, of course, we're gonna end how we're gonna end, and like you can put it together, but we're not gonna make a big deal out of like um, this legend that has been created out of nothing by the guy who wrote the story.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like a Deus Ex Machina at the end, where it's not really properly like set up or paid off. And again, I'm okay with that. It would be really fascinating to get the full undiluted sort of vision behind this as like a companion piece to this, which it's again, it does a few interesting things, but it's like a big dumb monster movie that's also like a pseudo slasher movie, which I love. And yeah, it so it is the only movie that I've ever seen where it is a monster giving a piss baptism to a possessed priest.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say that I know we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but like that guy that plays the priest is everything. Like he
He's the
is,
spirit of the movie for me.
yeah. Oh my God. He is like, so, I mean, at an 11, but it's like, I don't mind that when
Mhm.
you're dropped into this world that is already sort of weird and heightened. So, it's like he perfectly fits into this really kind of strange world. I mean, like everything about this film definitely has a feeling of like something's off, even when, something's like not necessarily happening. Everything just feels like weird
Mhm.
or just like not right. And I think that if you had a really good director, I think somebody like Clive Barker even could have like heightened that sort of feeling of like unreality to make a character like that sort of like feel a little more organic. But again, as it is now, it certainly is pretty weird and offbeat, and I love it. Like oh my gosh, he hams it up so much, the possessed priest at the
Yeah.
end. And I mean, he kind of like just steals the entire show. And like, it's kind of interesting when you kind of think about this in terms of like Clive Barker. I know he didn't direct it, but I mean, so what's interesting is he has a screenplay credit, but it almost sounds like they kind of changed a lot of his work. Like maybe somebody
Yeah.
did some uncredited work on it.
There's always someone like on those Empire movies that is like rewriting things, tweaking things. Because
Yeah.
like a first draft finished screenplay is never really like the end all be all like translation of what happens on screen. Because it's going through the mouthpiece of the director, in this case, not Clive Barker. Um, and yeah, so like there's been a lot of like little changes that happens to the script. It'd be interesting to actually read the screenplay as Clive
As it
Barker
was. Yeah.
wrote it. Yeah, and just measure that against what we got, you know?
Yeah, definitely because like I mean, you know, looking at this like this coming like before say like Hellraiser, you can certainly see how the monster definitely feels like something that is sort of a link to the Cenobites. He's not really wearing like leather, but it kind of like has this sort of like leather person kind of vibe to it. Um, and there's sort of like this really perverse thing where like the priest is like really like into Rawhead Rex, like even like even outside of the whole like pissing on thing, like
He's
which
really into him.
which I am amazed that they let into the movie. Like
I
I,
mean, it's visually exciting.
it, it's mind blowing though, because, I know it's probably like I'm sure they had a meeting where they're like, the monster pisses. Do we want to cut that? I mean, but God bless them, they left it in. But yeah, like there's this sort of perverse like scene where like Rawhead has the priest and he's like, do it. He's like, kill me. And I'm like, that is like kind of like fucked up, because like it seems like it's almost on maybe like a sexual level.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
Um
like, Rawhead Rex, take me right here. Like,
yeah.
and yeah, no, it's like there is like that visceral animosity to it, where it's like this priest deeply wants this thing to complete, and that,
Yeah.
that goes for like his desire for completion, which is another sex joke. But it's it also kind of gives you an insight to like his character wanting just like an absolute deconstruction of like what he represented visually before, which is like, um, was he the deacon of the church or something?
Yeah. The deacon, or I was like maybe like
Some
head priest. I don't really know what the hierarchy of that
some kind
is.
of like local authority figure
Yeah.
for that church at least. His motivation goes against everything that you thought that he was about, in the beginning. Like he's very weird in the beginning, but like the main character just kind of passes it off as, oh, this guy's just weird.
But I definitely get what you're saying though. It's sort of like it's almost like the exact opposite of his sort of facade or role. But yeah, I, yeah, there definitely is something that is wonderfully perverse about that. And I really like this setup of having like this like folk horror in this little Irish village. And there's like an actual monster about. I mean, it almost kind of makes me feel like Ken Russell's like Lair of the White Worm, for example.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that.
Like not obviously like in story because they're very different, but there's something that's sort of like this quote unquote civilized world that is just upheavaled by myth and fantasy come to horrific life. And now I'm like, I really want to see what Ken Russell could have done with Rawhead Rex.
Yeah, I think that would have been really cool. Um,
I mean,
and
yeah,
something tells me that um, getting pissed on would be like one of the least weird things
the
that
least
he could
of,
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
that would be the normalest thing that ever happened. And yeah.
mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, gosh, I think that so I mean, Ken Russell obviously is long deceased, but like who do you think could remake this in a really interesting way?
Hmm. Well, let's see. I mean, other than Clive Barker himself.
Yeah. Like I know this is always sort of my stock answer, but I feel like Guillermo del Toro could do a really interesting job.
Well, you get the little kid aspect to it, which
Um,
I know he's really good at um,
but
interpreting.
yeah, I mean, but then I would also sort of need my like, I feel like it would almost have to be like a queer creator to like get a lot of that text and subtext of Barker's work. or, like really like let it flourish. Again, it boggles my mind that we did get sort of the text and subtext in what is essentially probably a pretty watered down version of Barker's vision. Because I would have to say his screenplay was also probably even before it got like the final sort of go ahead, probably even had to be maybe reined in.
Yeah, I feel like they definitely did um, bring in a couple aspects that like, you can tell we're going in certain like peripheral directions, but maybe for runtime and like focusing on like conveying a singular tone, I think might have been the motivation behind that.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, at least
Um,
like this long after the movie's been made, you know.
yeah, and I definitely think that like, outside of like the whole like pissing, there was probably, like I said, some like S&M aspects that maybe sort of like got just like sneaked into there, like without really anybody sort of being aware of the subtext behind that.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I feel like, and I won't harp on this too long because this could be like an entire discussion all by itself, but I feel like there's a lot of times when, and it's something we're actually really, it's like hotly talked about with like Pixar, right? Having to like straight wash a lot of their stuff. Like,
Or even just having their stuff become like lesser than because Disney is like taking things out themselves or
yeah.
telling them to take them out.
Um, yeah, like stuff that either like wanted to be conceptually there that, like died in the womb, or like something that actually maybe like was filmed or animated at, but
Mhm.
um it's frustrating because there is a lot of that in cinema, and like it's kind of interesting in like pre-code cinema, like with like queer coding, and even like post like code era, a lot of like queer subtext had to be like deeply buried.
Yeah, like almost literally becoming code itself.
Yeah, like there was, I mean, and really it's just kind of like how like very clever filmmakers like got away with stuff that, we in the 21st century read as like, oh yeah, that's there's a queer subtext to it that
Yeah.
was intended and thankfully survived. But, getting back to Rawhead Rex, I kind of feel like there was probably maybe something like that,
Mhm. Yeah.
going on.
I I'm not too sure about him himself, but like going to well, basically just like addressing your earlier question about like who could like reapproach this material and like maybe give it um, the treatment that it should have gotten um, back when it was made. And like my mind kind of went over to Frank Henenlotter. Like I think
Ooh,
he would have had like a really good time with this.
yeah.
Um, and he also seems like a director, while I'm not entirely sure if he identifies as queer, but he could he would definitely know how to convey the original message
Yeah.
and not tamper with it in any way. But he also doesn't or didn't like remake properties. Like all of his stuff is uh, pretty much original.
Yeah. No, I love that idea. Like, because yeah, like I said, like you said, I don't know, and it's really none of anybody's business
Yeah.
how he identifies. But I will say that like, he seems to understand a sort of that sort of community that definitely intersects with this like source material. So yeah, that would be actually really cool. Like him directing, get like Gabe Bortalis to do like the makeup.
Mhm.
Like yeah, I'm loving that idea.
Yeah.
I will say that when like so um not so much anymore because he's like insanely busy, but like I know Frank and I used to like keep in touch, and like one of the things that he said that he wanted to get off the ground was a sort of parody of women in prison movies that he cheekily wanted to call what was it, Can O Women, or something like that. Like there was like, and I was like thinking, oh my God, how kind of great would that be? And Beverly Bonner, like RIP, gotta miss her. She did a women in prison send-up play with Divine, like the one and only. So I think, gosh, that would have been such a cool. I know that's such a totally tangent, but whatever.
Well, with the Smash popularity with Malignant, with that scene,
Mm,
I feel like um, there's still an audience for that. Like, I don't know if Frank has like kind of decided for himself that like it's gonna happen, it's not gonna happen, or if it's just like one of those things that he wishes he could have made, back in the day. But I certainly don't think that it's without the realm of possibility to
yeah.
be made.
Like I know, like when we talked about it, like pretty briefly, he didn't seem really that heartbroken, just that he felt like it was something he would have maybe wanted to do, but the time had sort of passed, I guess, by the time that, I mean, because, I mean, the women in prison films was such a specific period in exploitation cinema.
Yeah.
And, probably to get something like that funded now would almost be impossible. Like you could maybe like crowdfund it, like,
Hmm.
um, I mean, I feel like there's such an awesome resurgence of like Henenlotter love, which oh my God, I fucking love so much. Like did you see that Peacemaker had the Henenlotter
Hmm.
video?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many like little Easter eggs in that show. I love it to death. Which I
But
actually just finished it last night. Just
nice.
like as an
But
aside.
yeah, but like, oh my gosh, I flipped out when I saw that because I thought that was so cool. And like, it kind of makes me curious if like James Gunn ever met Frank in New York, because I know that like I don't know if James Gunn lived in New York, but I know that like he did a lot with Trauma that's based in New
Hmm.
York. So it wouldn't surprise
Yeah.
me that they were.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like they rub shoulders at some point, maybe like and like maybe working on or having just come off of like Romeo and Juliet or maybe pre-Slither.
Yeah.
Because like he has a Lauder shout out in Slither too.
Yeah. Um,
Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if like they at least had a couple lunches together, you know,
yeah.
here and there.
And I gotta say that like Frank is one of the nicest like guys. He has zero ego. He is just, I've never met anybody like that has a reason to be like boastful that isn't. Like
Mhm.
it's how I want to be. If like whatever deity willing, I get to that plateau even a little bit. Um, it's how you want to treat people. Like he's incredibly kind. But yeah, I could go on and on and on, but I won't. But yeah,
Yeah.
Henenlotter's Rawhead Rex, I would be there for it. I would
Hmm.
like, um, I mean, if that was like crowdfunded today, I would like fund the crap out of it.
Yeah. It's like hey Frank, here's my bank account number. Just
Yeah,
use
just
that.
take everything that you need and I'll sell some more stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like that idea. Like I think that also, I mean, like if we're going down that route, I could even see like Gunn
Mhm.
maybe having not writing it completely, but maybe having a little bit of creative input.
Yeah, for sure.
Because again, it would be like cool for like somebody in that kind of somebody that sort of at least seems like they have a bead on that sort of community
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
like handle that, like, but yeah, or like hell, just get like Clive Barker to write it. um like he's hopefully
Or
still
just
doing
use
something.
the original screenplay if it's not botched.
Yeah.
Just like do what he wanted to happen. You
um
know?
yeah, I mean I definitely would like to I think there's probably a commentary on Rawhead Rex that maybe explains a little bit more of like the original like like source material and stuff. But I like it as it is though.
Yeah, no, it's still a very fun movie. It's got what it needs to have. Um,
Yeah, like very flawed, but I think really fun. You definitely kind of have to be in the right sort of like mood for like something that's so over the top and like goofy, but I think it's actually pretty decently directed. I mean, it's not I mean, there are some
yeah.
sequences that I think are paced really nicely as far as like tension and sort of um like when to sort of like release that tension with a scare.
Mhm.
Like I actually think like the one sequence that kind of stands out for me besides the like um baptism by piss would be um like the sequence with the husband with like the pregnant wife, like that because shit's about to go down, like
Mhm.
it's set up where it's properly really creepy, and it gets kind of like weird and stroby like when he's attacking her.
Yeah,
um
that's right.
you,
Like
um
I don't love when that happens in movies because like I'm trying to figure out like, oh no, is my disc like fucked up? What's happening? Am I losing internet? Yeah. But yeah, I do remember now that they it's a thing people did. Um,
yeah.
I'm not sure what that's meant to evoke
Well,
exactly.
yeah, and it's weird because there's really not a lot of sequences that sort of feel like akin to that, like where that's just like a one and done kind of like they spent the budget on that like really cool sequence. But um oh, another thing I will say that I think is really cool. So okay, so this is also a little spoilery, so maybe jump ahead another 5 minutes. Um, that you think that the little girl is going to get killed or something.
Mhm.
They set it up really nicely where it's like this, like she's very vulnerable, like they think she's going to be next. And then like the bratty son in the car just gets eviscerated.
I do like me some child murders,
Yeah,
and
and
like that
listen,
extends
like
to movies only.
right. And I was gonna say like I can't talk about dead children and not bring up Luna. So Luna, shout out to you, girl. Talking about some dead kids. And if you want to get that reference, check out Humanoids from the Deep Dive, our
Yeah.
podcast, and you can hear all about Luna and how she loves dead children.
That's all the podcast is about.
It's yeah, literally, it's just dead children podcast. Um, worth noting that obviously she doesn't really love dead children, but you know, like in a fictional kind of sense. But who doesn't, right?
It's a draw for sure.
Yeah.
To it's almost like a something that could get you into the horror genre. Like if you like to see kids, get eviscerated, like then you might like horror.
Yeah, like I mean, listen, it's so funny because I was talking to my husband about how like just the other day about how like kids movies from the 80s and 90s like and you know, yeah, you could say even like further than this, but like they did not give a fuck about like sparing us. Like there's a lot of kinder drama in like 80s and 90s, like not even horror films, just like Disney films.
Yeah. Like one of those that did it for me, that I watched a ton when I was a kid, is the Goonies. And like that really just like has such a mean-spirited attitude towards its kids. Like if you just even just like pause and just look at like, so the group of kids, they're doing their thing, and then the crime family, like mama, whatever. It's been a little while since I've seen it, but like
I know what you mean though.
she's willing to like, she pulls fucking guns on these kids. Like she's willing to like put one of these children in the ground. And it's like so mean-spirited. I'm amazed that like my parents let me watch this.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. I want to do a whole episode about kinder trauma, but for anybody that doesn't really know that term, it's just sort of like it's basically what it sounds like. It's basically just like messed up stuff in like children's. I guess like so. I've always heard it in the context of film, but I'm sure it could be like other media.
Yeah.
Like specifically stuff that's not like horror per se, but is maybe like something that's like, you know, comedy or fantasy. I know that like it's so funny. I was thinking about this with the new 4K of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was like a
That's a good one too.
huge,
Kinder trauma.
yeah, well,
Dark shit in there.
that it does like what's the bad, I'm trying to think of the bad guy. It was like something Doom.
Yeah, Judge Doom.
Yes.
That was a
And
moment for me.
right, so like there's a scene where he like so they set up where okay, you can't really like in the world you can't kill cartoons, you know, like any kind of method, but there's like this like dip, they call it the dip, and I guess it's basically like I forget what he says it is, but basically
like
like
some
it,
kind of turpentine almost.
yeah, like so it's like clever in a way in like a real world application. This is probably how you would actually kill a cartoon. And they take the most adorable looking like shoe cartoon and like dips it in there and kills it. And it's like a
Mm-hmm.
kid's movie. And I'm like, that still fucks me up.
Yeah. Even going to like, and like I know we're still like wildly off topic here, but like the the deleted scene with Bob Hoskins' character where he's taking a shower and he has like basically like a personal hygiene version of dip that he uses like to wash like whatever like cartoon stuff is like left on him. I can't exactly remember, but like it kills it and then just goes down into the drain, and it's like this really like strangely dark moment where like he clearly just doesn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't like tunes from the beginning. Like that's his whole thing because he's paired with Roger Rabbit and like he learns to love tunes, but like it's in this middle point where he wants to wash this literally off of himself, and the only way he can do it is by dabbing a little turpentine on it, and it's a really dark and gross moment. There's I mean, no wonder why that scene that got deleted, but it's really fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, yeah, like definitely like kids media definitely like went hard. And yeah, I mean it kind of prepares you for like it, you know, for horror movies. Like I remember, I mean, you know, like as a really small kid, like parts of like Wizard of Oz really freaked me out because like the witch is like, I'm gonna straight up like kill you. Like this is
Mhm.
how long you have to live. And she pours the hourglass, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what is she gonna do? Is she gonna like come in that room and like murder her? Like, you know, your young imagination makes up,
Yeah.
you know,
Like, how would
everything.
a witch kill her? You know, it's not like she would just, when the timer's up, she just like pulls a gun and just like shoots
Yeah.
Dorothy in the head.
Brat, brat.
And your little dog too.
Oh
Oh
man,
God.
that would have been
But yeah.
hilarious though. But yeah, I mean, it's like, so yeah, it's interesting. Like, again, let me know in the comments, but I definitely want to do a whole video talking about, exploring these kind of crazy kinder trauma stuff. But, um, yeah, I mean, Rawhead Rex though, like nobody is safe.
Yep.
Like that kid gets eaten, and it's not like it's pretty graphic. Like it doesn't like it's not like Saw level graphic, but it definitely like, you know kind of what's happening.
Yeah. I feel like this here is a good indicator of like how graphic it could get.
Yeah. Like I watched it recently and I'm like, I don't like, he's getting like ripped apart, but I don't remember it being like especially like that being especially, I mean, it does get gory. I mean, obviously like with
Yeah.
the head,
It's
but
it's kind of like it's more of a quick flash where
hmm,
it's like it happens, like maybe you spend like 20 seconds on it, but then it
yeah.
just moves on.
And I mean, it is also kind of wild, like where it's placed in the movie. It almost feels like something that should happen a lot sooner, like maybe like maybe like the crescendo of like a first act into the motivating factors of, or maybe even like the end of act two as a motivating factor in the, but no, I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost like maybe like 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes before the end.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Something like that.
yeah, so it's kind of weird. I mean, again, like this movie is like paced weird, and by weird, I don't mean that it's like slowly paced, but like it feels like there's important things that maybe come a little bit later than you would think. Um, so yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. It is definitely unique. I always get really excited about a movie that like isn't really like anything else.
That's true. There's
Yeah.
there's no other movie like Rawhead Rex.
Yeah.
Um,
And just like I wouldn't, want something to be like Spookies, which I think is another movie that, um, I mean, yeah, like have you seen that like a lot? Have you seen that like a lot prior to, I guess, like the Joe Bob episode is kind of when I came to it.
oh, Spookies?
Yeah.
I think I'd seen it like 3 times before.
Okay.
Like I discovered it with a group of friends um, close to Halloween. We watched it um,
Nice.
from YouTube because like this was before it even got like a Blu-ray release. There was a DVD bootleg that existed out there, um, but they didn't have that. So we watched it on YouTube, and that was my first. That was my introduction to Spookies, and I think I watched it through there a couple more times. Then got the Blu-ray and
Nice.
watched that a few more times. And then when
Um,
Joe Bob did it, I was just like elated. I was so happy.
Yeah, I will say that like a lot of stuff that Joe Bob shows I've seen like well and thoroughly, but that was
Mhm.
certainly one of the really fun discoveries with his show. I mean, gosh, I'm so old. I remember when like Joe Bob actually had like the original like TNT.
The Monster Vision.
Yeah, Monster Vision. Oh my gosh. And now I'm like flashing back to the intro, which was very like mad
So
sciencey.
cool. Yeah.
Um, I guess like you were probably very itty bitty when that was on, right?
Um, that was like early 2000s, late
No,
90s,
it was like mid 90s, I think.
mid
I want to
90s.
say maybe 95, 96.
Okay. If it was 95, I was 4 years old.
Oh my gosh, I feel so old.
But I have seen like Monster Vision. Like I
Yeah.
remember it. I'm pretty sure that TNT ran like reruns of Monster Vision like through the
Yeah.
2000s.
It did and I mean it definitely did like run for not a long time, but not really a short time either. But yeah, oh gosh, I remember like when they would do their like Friday the 13th marathons at Halloween.
I wish
That
I
was
was old enough to watch those.
well,
um,
and network TV, a lot of it was cut, but
mhm.
like I really think that Joe Bob needs to do Rawhead Rex.
It would be fun, you know. I think he would have some pretty interesting insights on it.
Oh, for sure.
He's I mean, he knows everything about like all these drive-in movies. He's done. Um, I, I would be surprised if he didn't like do this on the movie channel at some point, like his
Yeah.
first show. Um,
Um, I will say that like monster piss foo needs to be a thing.
yeah,
That has to be in the totals somehow.
mhm.
Was there any nudity? Do you remember? I'm like, I don't
I
think
don't
there
really
was.
remember.
Um, I mean, that's shows you how much I pay attention to like naked women, but
Yeah,
I I kind of don't think. I feel like the couple was sort of getting hot and heavy, but I don't remember there being like any like I was just kind of thinking like if Joe Bob would have to deduct a half star for no nudity.
yeah, but I think I don't think that there is any,
Yeah.
which actually kind of works in the narrative aspect where Rawhead Rex has like um this non-desire to like to kill like maternal female figures maybe. So like
Yeah.
male gaze isn't even a part of it. So, like
Yeah.
he's just the pure testosterone like in a way that like he just needs to like rip people's fucking heads off.
That's an interesting point. And I will say that there is sort of this Freudian moment that, okay, so this maybe is a reach, maybe not. So there's this moment when he's got like his like, claws out and with that pregnant woman, but then it like retracts. It almost sort of looks like very phallic-y when it like retracts into the and if you watch it again, it feels very deliberately phallic, like, with the I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. Like it's like his fingers are like uncut dicks and like this it's kind of like the well I
Yeah.
wish I had like a still to show you or something because I feel like I'm doing a horrible
Yeah.
job at describing it.
But there's a very different image that just popped up into my head when you said that. I was thinking more Edward Penis Hands.
Well,
But no,
yeah,
I
I
get
don't
what you were saying though.
like I don't know. It's like you have to rewatch it again and it's almost like he is like literally and figuratively repelled by the I
Yeah.
don't know.
I can't find any images like screen grabs or anything of that, but like um
But yeah, you'll know when you see it though. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Um it's funny because it's something that I sort of didn't notice right away on my first couple of viewings. But then like now that I watch it, knowing a little bit more about Clive Barker, knowing a little bit about some of the subtext and text, and again, maybe it's reaching, but like some of it's like it's very intentional. So I can't imagine that, something that has overt sexual images and that isn't necessarily nudity, because again, I'm pretty sure there isn't any. Like even the infamous like pissing scene, you only see the pee from like an angle.
Yeah, it's like it's shot at like a 3/4.
Yeah.
It's almost like they followed the 180 rule on that one. Which like if you saw the reverse shot, I think you would probably see some Rawhead.
Yeah. God. This
Anyway,
to date, this is probably our most sort of unhinged episode, and I'm here for it.
yeah, I mean like it's hard to talk about Rawhead Rex and just like keep it um, you know,
Yeah.
untouched
You can't
from like the
right.
depravity that happens within.
Yeah, listen, you can't be too stuffy or scholarly. I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit, yeah. But also like talk about monster dicks. Whatever. Um um so yeah, I think that might be a good place to wrap.
Yeah.
Um
It's a hell of a double. A Dark Song and then Rawhead Rex.
that yeah, that would be a whip. So
Oh man.
again, I haven't seen Dark Song, but how you describe it really well, and it feels very much like a complete like whiplash of subject and tone.
Yeah. Although like I think like despite how these two films could not be more different from each other, um, the thing that Clive Barker does really well in his stories is he can have a character like Rawhead Rex that does all these like this visually ridiculous things because that's its character. It's basically an animal, right? So
Yeah.
um, it can fit alongside something that's more visually and texturally mysterious, like even with like the Cenobites, which are visually a little bit more ridiculous than they seem, um, where his diving into like their purpose, their reason for being is a lot more sinister than like what their um, presentation would have you expect. Um, so he can still like really take these outwardly um, visceral things where if he had the opportunity, like he probably could have like woven Rawhead Rex into something like a dark song and
Hmm.
make it work.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting. See, now I kind of want to do that double feature. I feel like, it would probably be good to go from a dark song first and then
yeah,
Rawhead Rex. It might be a little bit more difficult to go from something completely, although I feel like it's a little bit easier to go from something that's a little more serious to something a little more like,
yeah, because a dark song definitely has some visual stuff that in like a specific lens could be lifted and like put into something nearly as ridiculous as Rawhead Rex. But I think because Rawhead Rex is um, the way that it is as a film, it has like this very almost like EC Comics quality to it. Um,
hmm,
but that's just the lens that we see it through. It's really just like the character. himself that could be like supplanted in like another set of surroundings that would work.
Yeah.
So it's like the presentation of the film is um, kind of setting the expectation, right? So in a dark song, it's a little bit more dour, but like he wouldn't necessarily be out of place, but like he's not a spirit that would haunt like a house specifically. He's more
Yeah.
like a countryside kind of figure.
Yeah. I mean, it does sound like it would be interesting to check those out side by side, though.
Mhm.
I was trying to think of like what like tonally like would fit really well if you were going to do a more traditional double feature with Rawhead. Um, I know like the perfect movie will come to me like well after this recording, but um, well, actually, so I'll let the viewers decide what would make a good pairing with Rawhead Rex, or if you've even seen it and were traumatized by it, let me know. Also, before we wrap, I wanted to mention that we have T-shirts
Yeah,
for the
you got
show.
yours. I'm waiting for mine. So
I know
mail.
hopefully you get yours soon, but if you want yours, um, you're in luck. We have a code linked in the description for 15% off, and also we'll include a link where you can actually buy it. And if you want to support the show, that's kind of an awesome way to do that. And yeah, and also, if you like this video, definitely consider giving it a like and subscribe. Comments are always amazing and welcomed. And thanks for hanging out with us.